What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at Looper, written and directed by Rian Johnson. Now, Looper tells the story of these contracted killers who are known as Loopers, in which they carry out deeds by mob bosses from a very distant, from a very far future, in which this movie does take place in. Now, the reason why these contracted killers are pretty much doing hits for the mob in the future is because time travel has not yet been invented so and in the era and in the time period in which time travel has invented, these criminal syndicates send their intended targets back into the past. That way they can be executed. So that way they don't get traced in the future. It's a very convoluted explanation. It's very mind-boggling and confusing. And if I have any criticism, it's the overall plot of this movie is extremely convoluted and really hard to understand, in which Rian Johnson tries to explain the rules of this movie. But if you take away the plot and just focus on Looper for what it is, this is a really good science fiction action thriller, and this movie proves that when Rian Johnson is not bound by a franchise and when he's just doing original ideas, the man is extraordinarily talented. To me, Looper is Rian Johnson's deconstruction of the sci-fi genre, in which he does something that's a little bit different and a little bit more creative. And overall, I thought Looper is an excellent movie, despite maybe one or two things. I mean, this movie is backed by a cast that includes Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who play Joe and old Joe. So pretty much, young Joe is played by Levitt. He is the main character of this movie. He is a looper, and old Joe is the older version of the Levitt character. I mean, yeah, it's extremely convoluted. You just gotta bear with. I'm gonna do my best to try and flesh it out. So basically, young Joe is a contracted looper, and he is sent, and the mob bosses from the future pretty much have sent his older self to be executed. Now, if young Joe executes his older self, then his contract as a looper becomes terminated, and he becomes a free man pretty much. However, young Joe fails to kill old Joe, and the movie is basically a chase of this mob boss named Abe trying to hunt down young Joe for failing to kill old Joe. And this movie also involves old Joe trying to escape young Joe, while old Joe is trying to find this person called the Rainmaker, who in the future that old Joe is in, the Rainmaker has single-handedly dismantled all the mobs, and he's closing loops like a madman, and he's causing mass chaos. Yes, the plot of this movie is extremely convoluted, very contrived, extremely hard to keep up with, and I can see how this can just make your mind melt. But if you focus on this movie for what it is, which is a good action thriller with really good character work and a lot of good moments, and backed by solid performances, Looper is a really good movie. I think overall, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as young Joe does a really fantastic job. I like the character of Joe in general, and I thought Levitt gives him a lot of character, gives him a lot of personality, gives him a lot of charisma. Uh, Bruce Willis as young Joe, as old Joe. This is one of those rare movies where Bruce Willis actually looks like he's enjoying making a movie, and he actually looks like he gives a shit. Some of the best scenes in this movie involve Levitt and Willis sharing screen time, and there's this really beautifully directed, intense diner scene that these two have, and it's a brilliant scene, and the dialogue exchange between Levitt and Willis works for me, and I like it. Now, I know this movie got a lot of criticism because Levitt is wearing prosthetic makeup to make him resemble Bruce Willis, since Levitt and Bruce Willis don't look anything alike. I can look past that. I really don't care about that. That means nothing to me. I'm just watching two talented actors in a movie that I overall enjoy. And it's also backed by a really good supporting cast that includes Emily Blunt, who plays this character called Sarah, who lives on a farm, who is pretty much who pretty much that young Joe has to take refuge in after everyone in the world is trying to kill him and hunt him down. And I like the little bond that forms between young Joe and Sarah, and we find out Sarah has a little boy named Sid, who has telekinesis, like very powerful telekinesis, like in the same vein as Magneto. And in this movie, these people are called TKs, and some of them are above have can like float coins around, and others can have ungodly strength. And this kid Sid is one of those who have ungodly strength. And it's also revealed that Sid is this Rainmaker character that pretty much destroyed Old Joe's life. So after Old Joe is done hunting down these other three kids who are also born on the same day as the Rainmaker, like we see Old Joe kill one, and then we see him spare another one because now he realizes that Sid is the one that needs to go down. So I kind of like how old Joe, in a way, becomes very, very villainous, and young Joe pretty much has to stop old Joe from pretty much creating the Rainmaker, and it leads to a bitter ending where young Joe pretty much has to commit suicide in order to stop his older self from going on from having complete chaos. So I thought all that stuff was fine. The stuff with Jeff Daniels who played this mob boss named Abe. I like Jeff Daniels. Who doesn't? And I like him in this movie. He comes across as very, very intimidating, yet also very welcoming in a way as well. It's a very good performance, very underrated, overlooked performance. The rivalry that young Joe has with this other character called Kid Blue, I think is okay. It doesn't really do anything for me, to be honest with you. I mean, he has enough. I mean, young Joe has enough going on. Him having a rivalry with a Gat Man doesn't really is just makes it further convoluted. This movie also didn't really do a good enough job at developing a friendship with Joe and his friend Seth, played by Paul Dano. Since it's actually what happens to the Paul Dano character is what gets the plot moving. Since Paul Dano's character named Seth failed to kill his older self, and when Joe has to give up his friend, I'm supposed to care about that. Yet they've only shared maybe 3 minutes of dialogue, and I don't buy them as friends whatsoever. If you'd have given me maybe 2 or 3 more scenes of Joe and Seth having more of a friendship bond, then I can actually feel when Joe has to give up his friend. Instead, I don't feel anything because I barely spend time with these two to actually care. I actually care about more about Joe and Sarah than I do about Joe and Seth. And I think Joe and Sarah's relationship is much more better constructed. Not only that, I also like a little bit of a bond that Joe starts to form with the Sid character as well when he's taking refuge on the farm. I thought that was well handled as well too. The action sequences in this movie are very, very well done. They're very suspenseful. They're very, very thrilling. I love the cinematography in this movie. Like Rian Johnson creates this very grounded, realistic, futuristic, gritty look. I mean, yeah, it's I'm using like word salad to put it more clearly. Rian Johnson creates a future that is very, very grounded and very, very gritty. Like it's a future, it's a 2044 that I can envision we having in real life. Like there's no flying cars or anything like that, but it just has a very gritty street level look to it. And I love it. Like it really adds to the overall aesthetic of this movie. And it's fantastic. I love it a lot. This movie also has a lot of really cool visual cues as well. There's this one thing that I enjoyed where we're seeing an alternate reality in which young Joe is going through this we see young Joe having a daydream of him killing his older self, and him going through the years as a retired looper, becoming a hitman, eventually becoming old Joe, meeting the woman that will become his wife, and we actually see what happens to old Joe. His wife, he's being sent to the future to get executed, but during the arrest, his wife is accidentally killed, and this is what convinces old Joe to pretty much go back into the future to convince his younger self to pretty much disappear or to stop this Rainmaker character. So, yeah, it's very, very contrived and convoluted, but that's pretty much old Joe's motivation to want to going back into the future. And like I said, it's backed by a really good performance by Bruce Willis, who was very, very subdued in the movie, very subtle, but you can tell that he had a lot of emotion to. He had a lot of emotional depth to his character as well, which is why I say this is one of those rare Bruce Willis movies where it looks like he's actually enjoying himself. So, yeah, overall, those are my thoughts on Looper. I enjoy this movie. I think it's really, really good. I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Looper. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.